Hello, this is Claus Jensen presenting the fourth video in my series on Aron Nimzowitsch. And this game is also from the Carlsbad 1907 tournament, and his opponent playing the black pieces in this game is Dr. Milan Vidmar. And Vidmar was only a chess amateur, but a very strong one, and certainly not to be underestimated. In fact, he was fifth in this very tournament, and he was also awarded the GM title many years after this game. So a strong player indeed. And just before this tournament, he had graduated from the University of Vienna, where he studied mechanical engineering. And in 1911, 4 years after this game, he got a doctor's degree from the technical faculty of Vienna and enjoyed an excellent academical career for the next 40 years. But let's go back to chess and let's have a look at Nimzowitsch playing the white pieces against Vidmar from Carlsbad 1907. And the game starts knight f3, d5, d3, knight c6. And now a very strange opening choice from Nimzowitsch, but now he plays d4. Knight f6 and a3. Very modest opening moves from Nimzowitsch, but to use his own words, he says that he tried to force his opponent to declare his intentions. And Nimzo says that e6 would give back black a bad bishop, and if bishop f5, then he was planning e3, and then c4 and queen b3. But in the game, Vidmar plays bishop g4 instead. Then came knight e5, bishop h5, and c4 was played now. And here Nimzo says that an old analysis in this position said that if d takes c4 here, then queen a4, queen takes d4, knight takes c6, queen d7, and then g4 move, opening up for bishop to g2 with tempo, would maintain a piece for white. Knight e5, then queen b5, and white would keep the piece on c6. But this analysis was not impressed. Nimzo was not impressed by this analysis because he thought that here in this position, instead of knight takes g4, then black could simply play bishop g6. And he's right. This is indeed the strongest move in the position, and therefore he had decided that if d takes c4, then he would play the simple knight takes c6, b takes, queen a4, queen d7, and g3 with a good game for white. Black's pawn structure is damaged, and white is having an open game for his bishops and should have a very good game. But all this did not come into action because Vidmar didn't take on c4. He played e6. Queen a4 came, and now bishop e7 is the best move for black, says Nimzowitsch, but it's still difficult for black to prove compensation for the pawn after knight c3, castles, knight takes, and queen takes. But in the game, Vidmar played bishop d6. Then came knight takes c6, queen d7. And it's because of the move c5 now that Nimzo considers bishop d6 an inaccuracy. Bishop back to e7, and now comes bishop f4 because Nimzowitsch doesn't want queen to take on c6, and this is not possible now because then black would lose a pawn. So he has to take with the b pawn, e3, and now black would like to play a5 in this position, but since black has not yet connected his rooks, this a5 move would be met by b4, and there's a pinning of the a pawn in the a file. So Vidmar castled instead, and now comes a very nice move, and is illustrating one of Nimzowitsch's ideas of blockading. It's clear that a5 is a move that black would like to play at some point, but now Nimzowitsch plays bishop a6, blockading the black pawn on a7, making it a fixed weakness, and also giving less space for black on the queen side. Rook f to b8 and b4. And with knight e8, it's clear that Vidmar has to do something, and he plans a central breakthrough. Nimzo here rejected the idea knight d2. Then knight could go b3, a5, and then bishop b7 winning an exchange, but he was going for a bigger game, he says. So he castled instead. Then came the planned f6, knight d2, and g5. Since e5 was not possible, it would lose a pawn, so Vidmar had to play g5 instead. Bishop back to g3, knight g7, and with h3, Nimzowitsch prepares to keep the bishop on the board. Bishop e8, bishop back to h2 immediately, bishop d8, and now comes another very interesting Nimzowitsch move, because he now plays g4, and the idea here is to restrict the knight taking away the squares f5 and h5 for the knight. But the rationale between the move was much deeper than just that, because Nimzowitsch realized that since black had no play on the queen side, he would feel he had to do something on the king side. And that something could easily be, for example, an h5 break. And h5 was indeed what Vidmar played in the game. But Nimzowitsch was here quite convinced that opening files would be in white's interest, not in black's. And that's of course because black has absolutely no communication between the flanks. Just look at the two black rooks. They cannot move. White, on the other hand, he can easily play on both sides of the board, and Nimzo initiates this by transferring the queen from the queen side to the king side. Queen d1. Bishop g6. And Nimzo still has all the time in the world, and now he wants his knight to a5 before he transfers the bishop on a6 to the king side. So now comes knight b3, h takes, f5, bishop e5, f takes g4, queen takes g4. And black was the one to open files and diagonals on the king side, but as Nimzowitsch foresaw, it is white who capitalizes. Knight f5, knight a5, queen h7, and bishop e2. And Nimzowitsch is having an excellent position here. Vidmar has been outplayed so far, I think we can say. He plays queen d7 to defend the c6 pawn, but then he's leaving the g6 bishop unprotected. And f4 could have capitalized on this, because it was the most direct way to a big attack for white, forcing an opening of the f-file. But instead, Nimzowitsch played queen h3, and then came king f7, and only now comes f4. But then Vidmar has g4, avoiding the opening of the f-file. And that would of course not have been possible had Nimzow's queen still been on g4, but it wasn't. Now comes bishop takes g4, and now bishop e7. And with this move, black has a hope of bringing his rooks back to the game. Rook a2 from Nimzowitsch, rook g8, rook d2, g2, knight h4, rook g3, rook a to f8, and king f2. And although Vidmar was allowed to free up his position somewhat after Nimzowitsch missed this f4 move, it's clear that Nimzowitsch still has an advantage. And in view of this, Vidmar decides an interesting exchange sack here to create some counterplay in the h-file. So he plays rook h8 here. Bishop takes, rook f to g1, and rook h6. And clearly Vidmar hopes to play bishop f8 to defend the rook, and then bishop e4, and then perhaps a discovered attack on the white queen. But Nimzowitsch plays an excellent combination here. He plays the very good move bishop h5. And if rook takes, then rook takes g6, bishop f8, rook back to g4, and now the black knight is lost on h4. So in the game, Vidmar captured with the bishop, and then came rook g7 check, king e8, rook g8 check, bishop f8, queen takes h4, queen h7. And up until now, Nimzo has played a very good game. Okay, he missed this f4 move, but he's still having a completely winning position. But unfortunately, he misses several moves that were outright winning here. Knight takes c6 is one move. Rook 1 to g7 is another move. A very nice move, taking advantage of the pinned bishop. And also knight b7 would be winning. But in the game, Nimzowitsch played rook takes f8 check, king takes, and now he had planned queen d8 check, but completely overlooked the obvious bishop e8. And Nimzo describes this as an unfortunate hallucination. So instead of queen d8, he now played f5, e takes f, rook h1, f4, and now queen takes f4, king e8 and e4. Then white would still be able to play for the win. But I think Nimzowitsch was still shocked that he blundered so badly on the last move. So now he just goes for a quick draw. He plays queen d8 check, bishop e8, queen f6, rook takes queen, bishop f7. So even if it was very sad that Nimzowitsch blundered the win, I still think it was a very interesting game with where we saw some of his ideas in action. The blockade of the pawn on a7, and the restrictions of the knight on the king side, and also he tempted Vidmar to open lines on the king side, which was in fact in Nimzowicz's favor. So he played a very nice game, and sad that he blundered in the end. And I hope you agree that this was an interesting game, and I hope you enjoyed watching the video. And thanks for watching, and expect more Nimzo videos from me in the future. Bye bye for now.